Indeed, I'm somebody who represents this special profession that is supposed to use money to actually make more money out of it. And one of the reasons why the people wanted to have me here on the stage is to make clear that actually this whole money making may really have quite some significant relation to nature. This is a bark beetle. It's a giant, a monster even. The bark beetle is able to stifle, throttle, girdle trees, massive trees. If the bark beetle starts to execute, the trees may get sick, if they were not sick already, and they may die. Forests may look like this. You can easily see that a forest like this may struggle to keep the soil moist, may struggle to keep back water. This forest may actually also struggle to stabilize the ground on the very which this forest is growing on. And yes, of course, then if you have this kind of forest, no surprise, all kinds of things happen, which we are all aware of, because we hear it all the time nowadays. And that's quite clear, where then all of a sudden the financial institutions, the insurance companies, the investors come in. Why is that? Yeah, obviously because these type of damages, they should be covered. And yes, it's true. The financial institutions, they are there to actually make sure that if something like this happens, infrastructure is destroyed, damaged, that there is some money to actually get this infrastructure back up. And it works actually quite well. However, if these damages happen more frequently, if these damages become in terms of volume ever bigger, then all of a sudden it doesn't work that well anymore. The insurance premiums may go up, and they need to go up because otherwise the money is not there to actually cover these forms of damages, up to a level where they are no longer affordable. You may have heard stories like the one from California, where there happened so many forest fires that houses can no longer be protected, insured against these fires because they happen too frequently. Well, you may say, okay, good, then the houses cannot be insured. No, this actually goes much further. If a house cannot be insured, you cannot finance it. Because if you want to have a mortgage, it needs to have an insurance. If you don't get a mortgage, it's trouble to actually own a house or buy a house. Then all of a sudden, the whole living space thing starts to crumble. That's one story. There's another story. You have heard already a little bit about pollination. We have lots of pictures. This is a bee. The red circle is a bee. No, it's actually not a bee. This is a very special device that farmers, in this case Chinese farmers, use to somehow climb into the trees, and they start to pollinate the blossoms of the trees. Now, yes, it's true I'm an investor, but you don't need me, for sure not, to explain to you that this kind of process is not that efficient and effective as if there were a bee flying to that blossom. The moment you have these type of process changes, you all of a sudden as an investor get lots of things going. All of a sudden the costs go up for the very simple pollination process. The supply chain actually may look very, very different because some form of supply doesn't exist in these volumes that you actually would like to have. This means that all of a sudden assets you are investing in, let's say in agriculture, in tourism, in food, need to be reevaluated. People all of a sudden start to look at something like volatility of prices, and then the big hammer comes in. The big hammer is cost of capital. What does that mean? Yeah, all of a sudden the people require more return from these type of investments because there's more risk to it. And then all of a sudden they say, okay, no, we unfortunately cannot allocate money to this business any longer. And then you have big economic issues. You, of course, have also heard already from this cattle topic. Maria mentioned that, indeed, 3/4 of cattle, biomass, mammalian biomass, is cattle. I mean, you may like cattle anyway, so not bad. But that cattle eats actually lots of crop. Depending on the region and the country and the area, that cattle needs to eat 1/4 or even up to 3/4 of all crop that humans are producing. They eat the crop. They need to eat the crop because we want to actually cattle to produce dairy and red meat. But in order to be able to actually have fairly well-doing cattle, not sick cattle because we don't want to eat sick cattle, we need to have that cattle eat antibiotics. Roughly a quarter of all antibiotics that we humans produce is eaten by cattle. Financial industry comes again in. Why? Because you may be a health insurer, and as a health insurer, you may actually have troubles with this. Why is that? Because the people eat the red meat, and if they eat the red meat, they eat the antibiotics. The bodies become chemical laboratories. The bacteria in these chemical laboratories all of a sudden become resistant. The person gets sick. You try to give antibiotics. The antibiotics don't help anymore. You have a very long treatment, and as a health insurer, it starts to become very interesting. So these are very simple examples why actually financial institutions should care about nature. They really should care. But we should go once back to why is it that the bees are gone and we need to pollinate with our hands? Why is it that we actually have cattle eat all these antibiotics? Why is it that the bark beetle is such a monster? Now I could go into all these examples, but I have only 15 minutes, so let me go with the bark beetle. We make the bark beetle a monster in the following form. In the 18th, 19th century, we had to cut a lot of wood because we had to construct a lot of things. By the way, in the 1950s, we again did a lot of tree cutting. In the 1950s, you can imagine the construction industry had a boom phase. We cut the tree. And of course, there are people who are the owners of the forest who want to have return. They get it, of course, because the trees are cut, they can sell the wood. But then they want to have more wood. And then the question is, how fast can you get wood? And if you do this with an oak or some other type of species of tree, it takes some time. So you go actually for some type of tree that grows really fast but has some characteristics, which are, it's a good construction wood, or wood that can be used for paper. And that is what happened in the 18th, 19th century and also in the 50s, in the last century. We went for Norway spruce. Norway spruce is now 30% of all forests in Central Europe. The bark beetle loves Norway spruce. That's how it works. We want to have massive return. We want to go for nature and make it better. And the moment we make it better, we actually tinker with some things we do not really understand. Back then in the 18th, 19th century, the people actually grew this Norway spruce because it's so fast. They did not think so much about nature and biodiversity. And in particular, they did not think so much about nature and biodiversity because they thought, well, this is actually a next generation issue. They will solve it then, the next generation. It happens to be the case that us here, we are this next generation. And now we have to take up the bill. That's how it works. Now, no surprise, given all this, of course, the financial industry starts to understand the issue. The financial industry is even able to quantify. There is one of these wonderful initiatives that we have there, in this case, really a very special one, the so-called Network for Greening the Financial System, driven by central banks. They have looked into it, and they do these type of quantifications. You don't need to go into the figures, but let me tell you, what they figured out is roughly 8 to 10% of GDP globally is going away. Now you may say, 8, 10% GDP. I can tell you as an investor, the hassle, the discussion that we have, if some country reports a quota of GDP reduction, is enormous. The people come immediately up with, the industry is going to decline, much of jobs are going to be lost, and so on and so forth. Currency troubles, these are the topics that immediately come up, a quota. We talk 10% GDP out. So now that the financial industry obviously can quantify this, you may not be surprised to hear that the financial industry clearly understands, at least a few of them, that there need to be some programs. We need to do something. Well, these programs, they look like perhaps you would let's say, in any case, come up within 5 minutes how this program should look like. What is such a program typically? Yeah, well, first of all, we need to have information. We need to have the information about what is the impact on nature. What's the risk related to nature? What's the opportunities? So information gathering needs to be there. Let us assume, I'm a mathematician, so it's easy for me. Let us assume we have that information. Once you have that information, you can actually fairly quickly start to think about true risk assessment. You can think about product development, service development. That all comes up quite nicely, actually. And with this, you also may be able to then think about target setting. So what can you do to really become nature positive as a company? And with this, then even come up with measures and report against these targets. And this may even allow that some of your customers and other stakeholders, they gain trust because you have targets, how you are going to change towards nature positive, and you really perform against it. It's good. Huh? This is the not so bad program. There are 3 issues. Issue number 1, the information gathering is not so simple. If a few financial institutions are gathering information and other companies also do it, that's simply too little. Because financial activity, as much of corporate activity, is fairly global, fairly widespread. If it's only a few, the information is simply not sufficient enough. Because what you would like to do is the following. You take your financial information, super quality assured, reasonable assurance, your auditor is doing this. You bring up your information about nature, or even better about sustainability at large, again, quality assured, and then you integrate. This is what you would like to do. An integrated set of information. On this one, you want to do the decision making. But in order to integrate something, it's not sufficient to only integrate this one. No. You need to integrate the full set of information, and for this, you need to have the entire economy to properly report. This is where regulation comes in. Many people nowadays are really struggling about these reporting requirements. One of the famous acronyms that we have in Europe is CSRD. You don't need to care what that is. It's a reporting directive, RD, reporting directive. It requires that companies of a certain size report about their impact, their risks, their opportunity from sustainability at large. That includes very much nature. Very good regulation. Now many people say, boy, it's so cumbersome. Now we need to do this all. The costs, the process changes, all these things that we need to have. May I tell you, if forever we have disregarded nature and we now need to integrate it, is anybody wondering that this is an effort? I don't think so. Huh? It's quite clear. It's quite clear. There is an effort. The regulation is super because it is widespread in the economy. We get the information. And by the way, for me, moneymaker type of guys, it's great because then market efficiency, a thing that we love, is going to come back. Because today, the markets cannot be efficient because they have only the financial information. The nature information is completely missing. We need it, however, because the risk, I explained to you. Now, how should the market be ever efficient if that part is missing? It needs to come in. And therefore, we are actually quite grateful for this reporting. Reporting is one thing. The other thing is speed. Many of these great initiatives that we have out there, many of these great initiatives are really doing great commitments, great target setting, great forms of ambition setting, great forms of programs, great form of challenging the transformation. They do this with the ambition of being ready 2030. Now, the decisive decade is the 20s. Again, I'm a mathematician. I do understand 2030 is next decade. We seem to be too slow. Absolutely. Targets need to be 25, 27. Measures need to be against these targets, and we need to have the programs against these targets. Then we have the third issue. Even if we do all this, so the wonderful, we have the, let's say, the alert level, we have all this program, we have the speed, we have the reporting. Even if you do all this together, the 6th mass extinction will be faster than us. It will be faster than us. What does this mean? We do all these wonderful programs, and then we are ready, to protect nature, but there is no nature to protect. That is what it actually means. So we need, to a certain degree, come up with protective areas. We need to be willing to invest into protective zones. That is very relevant. This is why the 30 by 30 that we have heard today, or for instance, the nature restoration law, 20%, it's going in the direction of the 30 by 30, is super relevant. Yes, again, super controversial because it's a challenge. It's really an effort. But we need to have it. Otherwise, this economy will simply not be able to evolve. Now you have heard the full story, what we actually need to do. I can tell you a few financial institutions are doing this, but still you could say, okay, that works. That works for me. No, I need to tell you, the same is true for us here in the room. Everyone individually needs to figure out, what do I understand of nature? So your information piece. You need to understand, what do I actually need to change to protect nature? And that leads most certainly to a question, which is, what is a good company? What is a good service? What is a good product? And you need to be informed to challenge this, to actually drive the ambition. That leads you to the question in the end, what is a good life? You must find an answer to that question. It is what it is. I'm really grateful that I have the chance to talk here at this conference, but I need to tell you, it's really sad. It's really sad. You need to have a financial institutions guy, a guy who is doing money, making money, to talk about how important nature is. You had vacation perhaps. You were in nature. That we need to have a conference to make ourselves aware nature is important is a very sad story. The good thing is we have the conference. The good thing is we have the conference, and we can talk, and with this talking, we clearly can raise our ambition and really start to work very fast. Thank you.